Good morning, students. How are you, ma? Hope you are safe at your home. So today we are going to one more disease in musculoskeletal system, that is Paget's disease. So I don't know whether you heard about this disease or not. So we are going to discuss about this disease. So few people call it as Paget's or Paget's. So this is now we can call Paget's or Paget's. So Paget's disease is an we are discussing about the introduction. Paget's disease is an it's a chronic condition of bone characterized by disorder of the normal bone remodeling process. In previous classes we discussed about remodeling, especially in fractures also we discussed in detail about remodeling process. Okay, just recollect it. Therefore you can learn, you can remember about remodeling process. This is a very important one. Then characterized by an excessive breakdown of bone tissue followed by abnormal bone formation. So you know what is normal bone formation and where the points where the bone starts its growth. Okay, then also known as osteitis deformans. This is of unknown cause. The other name is osteitis deformans or Paget's, affecting men twice as frequently as women. That is more common in men. For a woman it's very rare, especially in children also it's rare, but this has been one of the disease in musculoskeletal system, named after the England surgeon Sir James Paget. So this disease has been first named by an England surgeon by name Sir James Paget. So after his name the disease has been named as Paget's disease. Then the condition this has been described by James Paget in 1877. So the other name is, as we discussed, osteitis deformans. So this disease is approximately 3% of everyone above 40 years of age. This is more common, and partially or complete involvement of a single or multiple bones of exaggerated rates of resorptive and osteogenetic activity leading to bony thickening and deformity. This is the introduction. So coming to the etiology, the cause of Paget disease is actually unknown. Disease may be caused by a virus, that is by infections, viral infections. When the patient has been exposed to the virus, that may cause Paget's disease. Paramyxovirus infection of osteoblasts may activate of the C-Fos proto-oncogene. This is the proteins that have been developed in the body. When the virus enters into the body, then naturally the body reacts, and C-Fos protein will be reacting, and C-Fos proto-oncogene will be released, resulting in localized abnormal osteoclastic activity typical of Paget's disease. And also a person's genes may predispose them to developing Paget's disease. So genetic factors may be very common in some cases if viral infection is not observed. Paget's disease affects older skeletal bone of adults. So the first bones, especially the longer bones, which have been developed in the early ages of the fetus or the child, that will be affected. There is also an extremely rare form of Paget's disease in children, referred to as juvenile Paget's disease, but this is very rare among children. So coming to the pathogenesis. So what are the changes that occurs when the person or when the patient is affected with Paget's disease? So these changes are hypervascular or osteolytic phase. So hypervascularity can be observed in osteolytic phase. Then that leads to initial phase of disorder involves bone reabsorption by osteoclasts. So you know about the osteoclasts and osteoblasts, isn't it? So these osteoclasts and osteoblasts, they are based on their location. They are named as osteoclasts and osteoblasts. In first year itself, in anatomy and physiology, during bone structure, you could have learned about that. So the osteoclasts are derived from pluripotent cells of bone marrow and lie in the region of bone resorption in pits called Howship's lacunae. So just recollect the subject. They lie in the region of bone resorption of these pits. These pits are called as Howship's lacunae. Okay. Then osteoclasts primarily responsible for bone resorption and help for bone remodeling. Okay. So then the initial phase of disorder involves bone resorption of osteoclasts. That leads to intermediate phase. So then after this intermediate phase, again osteoclitic activity and osteoblastic activity. So just now we discussed about the osteoclasts, isn't it? They are derived from pluripotent cells of bone marrow and lie in the pits. They are called Howship's lacunae. These osteoclasts primarily responsible for bone resorption and remodeling. Then the next phase is exhaustive stage, that is burning out. That is the bone will be starts reducing its resorption. Then abnormal matrix persists, but cellular activity is nearly absent. There will not be any cellular activity. Then that leads to finally Paget's disease. So here next comes classification. So the classification shows two types: inflammatory disease and congenital. So this inflammatory disease classification shows multifocal chronic skeletal disease due to chronic paramyxoviral viral infection. So already in etiology we discussed about viral infection, that is paramyxoviral infection, and as a result the bone that is formed is abnormal. So bone remodeling will be occurred because of the viral infection. The next classification comes congenital. Here certain of genes may be associated with Paget's disease, including the sequestrosome 1 gene on chromosome 5. So what are the clinical manifestations? That is signs and symptoms. So the symptoms we can observe in Paget's disease is more commonly asymptomatic, but may exhibit a variety of non-specific symptoms due to increased bone turnover. So if at all viral infection is there, then the general symptoms may be observed, and in later phases of the disease the other symptoms can be observed. The bones that are more commonly affected include the pelvis, the spine, skull and the lung bone. So these are the different bones that are commonly affected in adults. Okay, that is pelvis, spine, skull and the long bones. So these are the older bones, that is these bones are formed first in fetus. Then individuals may experience any or a combination of the following symptoms. So after usually the patient will have asymptomatic, will come out with asymptomatic, but in later stages the individual may experience some symptoms like bone pain because of the fragility or bone remodeling, the fractures may observed. Then skeletal deformities like bowed legs, you know what are bowed legs? The external bending of the long bones. Then fronto-occipital skull enlargement. Fronto-occipital skull enlargement. You know where the frontal bones these exist in the skull. Then warm sensation due to increased blood supply, because already we discussed in pathophysiology that there will be vascularization, increased vascularization. So due to increased blood supply to the abnormal bones, naturally that part will be warm. Then nerve damage, that is hearing loss, visual abnormalities. Cardiac abnormalities, the shortness of breath can be observed, that is the heart function will be reduced. Then the other manifestations like signs may be bitemporal skull enlargement. So you know the temporal bones. So bitemporal skull enlargement with frontal bossing, that is protruding or projecting forward. Diluted scalp veins, they are more visible, and nerve deafness in one or both ears. So deafness, isn't it? So when the nervous system is also affected, that is because during the bone resorption, there will be the nerve damage may occur, and that leads to nerve deafness in one or both ears. And the other sign is also angioid streaks in the fundus of the eyes and a short kyphotic trunk. So these patients, when there are abnormal changes in the vision and external eye appearance, then the patient has to be sent to the ophthalmic. Angioid streaks of the fundus can be observed. So how do these can be diagnosed? So first, blood chemistry. Patient blood of the patient who have Paget's disease can be sent for complete blood picture. Results indicates very high alkaline phosphate levels with normal serum calcium and phosphorus. Excuse me. So blood chemistry, that is alkaline and acidity and alkaline test will be done. Very high alkaline phosphate levels with normal serum calcium and phosphorus. There is no known cure for this disease. So the patient has to manage throughout his life with the treatment. So in most of the cases, we know diabetes, then hypertension, all these are, there will be treatment will be there. There will not be, that is, the patient may not be completely free from the disease. So like that, there is no known cure for this disease. Most cases are mild and asymptomatic. No treatment is necessary in asymptomatic cases. Okay. So when the patient comes with the symptoms like pain, means painkillers, fractures means they have to go for casting and they have to avoid further fractures. So other ultrasound imaging considerations or investigations are X-ray of the skull, spine, pelvis and long bones. Because as already we discussed, the most common affected bones of the in the body are skull, spine, pelvis and long bones. The next is CT scan. So control tomography scan, you know, MRI, that is magnetic resonance imaging, especially the spine area, the skull part and the spine areas, pelvic areas can be easily observed when there is any damage or pain or fractures are appeared. Then radionuclide bone scan or RNA. This is also another imaging investigation. Then radiological appearance, how it appears. So in radionuclide bone scan readily detect the Paget's disease even in its very early stage. That is why this radionuclide bone, that is RNA scan image, is more advised for these patients, because this Paget disease can be diagnosed or detected in very early stages. This helps for further prevention of further damage of the bones, and at that stage we can try to manage the case. Then radiographically, the affected bone typically demonstrate cortical thickening with a coarse and thickened trabecular pattern. Then mixed areas of radiolucent osteolysis and radio-opaque osteosclerosis may be seen. So there will be mixed areas, both osteolysis and osteosclerosis can be observed. So here this shows how there is remodeling of the bone, tibia has been given in this radiograph. So radiograph of the fibula and tibia of the patient in figure demonstrating the effect of advanced proliferative Paget's disease on the fibula and tibia. So the first and second both can be observed. Then Paget's disease on the pelvis. So when you keep this normal image of a normal pelvic bone, then keep this one and keep that normal one, then you can observe the changes if you cannot identify here in this picture. Paget's disease involving the left hemipelvis and right, there is severe osteoarthritis of the left hip, but a relatively normal joint space in the right hip. So I can observe, but I don't know whether you can observe or not. There is difference between left and right, isn't it? The half of this pelvis, the right and left of half of the pelvis, you can observe this. So coming to the complications, I think the heading is not so clear. That is complications. Try to understand that. So what are the complications? So naturally the fractures of the bony deformities, then secondary osteoarthritis. So this is where, especially when the Paget's disease is around the joint. That is, around the joints means this is the articulation of two bones. So at that place, when the Paget's disease affects that area, secondary osteoarthritis will be observed. Then neurological complications, nerve root compression and cauda equina syndrome can be observed, and skull involvement. When the skull is involved, affected with the Paget's disease, so as early in clinical manifestations we discussed about deafness, vertigo, all these things. No? So deafness can be there. That becomes more complicated. Then vertigo, tinnitus, dental malocclusions, then basilar invaginations, then cranial nerve disorders. Then sarcomatic degenerations can be observed. That is, osteosarcoma can also be observed as a complication. Increased bone vascularity. So as a signs and symptoms, under signs and symptoms, we discussed about the because of increased bone vascularity, the path can be felt warmness. So if it is highly vascular, then that will be complicated as a high output cardiac failure. Then inactive lesions doesn't require any interventions. Goal of the treatment is suppressive of active disease, then relief of pain, prevention of deformity and fractures, high output of cardiac dysfunction, reducing the sarcomatous transformation. So actually the patient may have pain, symptomatic treatment will be given, and we have to prevent the further complications like suppressive active disease, then deformities and prevention of fractures, prevention of deformities and prevention of fractures. Then cardiac dysfunction may be because of increased vascularity, cardiac dysfunction may be one of the complications. So that has to be observed. Then reducing the sarcomatous transformation. So then comes the nursing care. So actually again the heading is missing, very sorry ma. The objective of nursing care is to avoid possible complications, then reduce the pain, then for juvenile Paget's disease, in case of juvenile Paget's disease, inform the children and their families about the process of the disease and the treatment management. Then in acute stages of the disease, restriction of movement may be observed in the affected joints. So therefore the patient will be feeling very inconvenience, and he may not be moving, or he may not be walking very freely. So supporting the affected joint makes the person to be more comfortable. Then the child will be in a comfortable position. Then cautiously and gently moving the patient will reduce the pain. Pain treatment will relieve the patient. Pain treatment will give some relief. Then the patient will be relaxed. Vital findings are taken and recorded because there is increased vascularity. Vital signs monitoring is very important because we are supposed to prevent the complications, isn't it? So therefore, naturally we have to go for regular vital monitoring, especially pulse and also BP. If important changes may occur in the measurements, then this has to be shared with the doctors and informed to the doctors. Then coming to the nursing diagnosis. The hyperthermia related to the infections, fluid volume deficiency risk with regard to the excessive fluid loss, then change in comfort depending on the infection, swelling and hyperthermia process in the bone. Actually, you know how to write the nursing diagnosis, isn't it? So afterwards we will make an assignment in nursing different how to frame nursing diagnosis in a musculoskeletal system. So this is very briefly, I am just giving some points. Pain and discomfort, physical restriction of movement associated with musculoskeletal disorders, then altered nutrition less than the body requirement related to the loss of appetite, risk of deterioration of skin integrity in relation to the physical immobilization, that is change in the health condition, because naturally the patient will have bone decreased bone density, then chance of fractures, then remodeling phase of bone. So all these causes the patient to restrict his movement. So naturally when there is a restricted movement, then skin integrity will be changed. Anxiety in relation to the hospitalization. So naturally when the patient is admitted in the hospital, for everyone there will be anxiety. The hospital environment itself causes anxiety. That is why we insist the nurse to make the patient anxiety free. Therefore, you have to be more freely, make the patient to move freely in the hospital. Then risk of injury in relation to immobilization because of spread of infections. So actually when the patient is admitted in the hospital, there will be nosocomial infections may be there. So therefore we have to instruct the patient to care of himself. Of course nowadays corona is again giving again insisting more on personal hygiene, isn't it? Hand washing, everything. So the rest of the life has to be continued in this manner. So most of the world population has been addicted, or they are practicing personal hygiene because of corona. So naturally when the patient is admitted in the hospital because of any reason, there is a chance of spread of infections. So aseptic techniques as a nurse we have to follow, and also to some extent the patient can be educated regarding these techniques. Then because of limited physical activity, social isolation in relation to the therapeutic isolation, there will be, the patient will be psychologically also disturbed. Risk of colonic constipation due to immobility and dietary changes. So deficit in entertainment activities due to long-term hospitalization and insufficient mobility. These causes risk of colonic constipation. Then poor nutrition. Of course, naturally when the patient, the hospital environment itself will give loss of appetite, isn't it? So the patient has to be will be taking very less food, and that cause poor nutrition. Change in nutrition due to anorexia, that is secondary to the infectious process. Okay. Then risk of deficiency in skin integrity due to mechanical irritation of the plaster splint. So already we discussed about this, because of immobilization, poor restricted immobilization. Again, because of the plaster or splint, or if the patient has been admitted with the fractures, all this causes risk of deficiency in skin integrity. Then risk of trauma depending on the process of the disease, that is pathological fractures. So the patient may not be admitted with fractures because of due to change in the bone status or bone condition. Further, though the patient is admitted, sometimes he may experience fractures. Okay, so that is all about Behçet's disease. So hope you understood, and you can send your doubts to the WhatsApp. I will try to clarify all the doubts. Okay, ma. Thank you.